All right. It looks like we are live again on Facebook and ready to go on on YouTube as well. So hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good Saturday, whether that was at work or at home or whatever you're doing. Uh, for some reason, just a minute ago, I had a funny story I was going to tell you on my mind, and then I had to go tell my boys something really quickly, and the funny story slipped my mind, and now I can't remember what it is. What's really weird? I'm buying a little bit of time here for people to get on. Hey, Ellen, I already have George here on YouTube and Ellen on Facebook, and I know a few other people will probably tune in here in just a minute. It's really weird. Usually, I am really protective of Saturday evenings. I want to be home on Saturday evenings. I want to have everything ready to go for Sunday on Saturday evenings. I want to get to bed early on Saturday evenings, and all those kind of crazy things. Not crazy, but just things. And I always wake up on Sunday mornings with like butterflies in my stomach. Not worry. Worry certainly isn't the word, but and then by the time I'm ready to go on Sunday morning, like all that goes away. But it's really weird. Um, None of those things happen anymore, like right now anymore. And I certainly think once we get back to it, I'll probably lose more of the butterfly in my stomach, and it'll certainly be more exciting. Just looking forward to being back with everybody. I know that's probably going to be a while, but that's right. I can still look forward to it. Think about it. We have some exciting things planned for tomorrow, and so I want to make sure that you certainly tune in tomorrow uh, for Pioneer Baptist Church, our live stream. I'm going to share something with our church tomorrow that's exciting, and pretty pumped about it. Been working on it this week, and looking forward to it. So excited to share that with you tomorrow as well. All right, we are a couple minutes in here, and I'll jump into our topic for this evening, and we're going to be talking about cultivating contentment. We are, again, this is Thoughts of Family, equipping today's family for today's culture through the unchanging truth of God's Word, and we're going to talk about cultivating contentment. Um, uh, Maybe this may gross some of you out. Some of you may enjoy it, but I always, when 4th of July rolls around, always like an opportunity to catch the Nathan's hot dog eating competition. And for right now, 2018 was when the world record was set. Joey Chestnut, who's won many of the Nathan's hot dog eating championships, he holds the world record now, set in 2018. He ate 74 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes. It's about 7.5 hot dogs and buns per minute. Somebody did the math on it. He consumed over 20,000 calories in those 10 minutes. He consumed in 10 minutes what most of us probably should consume in like 10 or 11 days. So that's kind of crazy. He also won $10,000 for every time the champion wins that. He wins $10,000. Now, my worry tonight is not that your children will have a penchant to indulge in hot dogs. But there is somewhat of, especially in American culture, a consumer mentality that kind of is shown in that competition, that enough is never enough. If you've ever watched those hot dog eating contests, it's shoving the next one into the next one, and how much more can I squeeze in, and how much more can I get in. And that's kind of the mentality of our American culture in consumerism, and it's important because even a young child can begin to think that happiness and identity are found in possessions. Now, I don't have the exact location where the study came from, but there was a study done on kids that were between the ages of 2 and 5 years old. And that studied through the scientific study there, they said that kids between the ages 2 and 5 watch on average 32 hours of TV a week, and they see over 40,000 commercials a year. And here's what's interesting about that. Science has proved that those young children watch the commercials just as intently as they watch the actual TV shows. And so, as they continued on in this study, they found out that brand loyalty. So, a kid liking one brand over another, only wanting one brand over another, can be established as early as 2 years old. By the time that kid is in first grade, so by the time he's the age of my youngest son, Canaan, by the time he's in first grade, they say most kids can recognize over 200 brand logos. And so marketers aren't dumb. They know that if they can reach our kids, then they can win the household because kids have such a big influence on parents' buying decisions. In that same study, these are a few of the examples. They said that kids influence 97% of the breakfast purchases in a home. Well, of course they do. They go with mom through the grocery aisle there, and they tell them what cereal they want. Kids influence 95% of the lunch purchases. They influence 98% of the decisions concerning where a family will go out to eat. They influence 76% of a family's software purchases. They influence 98% of a family's entertainment choices. They influence 94% of a family's choice for a family trip or an excursion or vacation or something like that. And so marketers understand and they know that kids are absolutely influential in their own home. And so marketers are no idiots. They're targeting kids at a very, very young age. And so rather than them thinking that happiness or identity is found in a brand or in fads, the question we want to ask ourselves is how do we cultivate contentment in their heart? And I'm sitting here, listen, I have a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and each facet of each kind of age range of parenting has its different struggles, but this is one that we're it's a constant back and forth with our kids even right now, is teaching them contentment. And so we're right in the middle of some of these things right now. The difficult part for us as parents is that oftentimes, if we're not careful, we model some very basic values, and we've fallen for some very basic subtle myths that we've believed and fallen into that have an effect on our kids as well. And I'm just as a precursor, I want to share some of these with you. One of those things is we just kind of think that prosperity is a divine right. Listen, I believe, the in the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we have kind of turned the American dream into this divine right that God, that as Christians and Americans, that God is just going to prosper us. Now, I will say that wealth gained by wisdom and diligence and divine favor is a blessing to be enjoyed. And should be invested in eternal riches, but God doesn't owe us anything financially or prosperity wise. Another one of the myths sometimes that we can fall into is thinking that it's my money. It's my money. I do whatever I want to, buy whatever I want to with it. And so it's important for us to remember that we are just stewards and managers of God's money. Everything that you have and everything that I have comes from God. James chapter 1 and verse 17 reminds us that every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. Another one on the other side of the spectrum that sometimes, if we're not careful, a subtle myth that we'll believe is that money is evil. And this one's close, but it's not quite there. Possessing money isn't evil. But somebody one time said possessing money isn't evil, but being possessed by money is. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 10 says, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." So this isn't about hating money, but it's about learning about what matters most. And so I have, so I think about how do we gain a proper perspective on this whole thing, and I want to share four thoughts with you tonight, really quickly, that would help us with that. Number one is this: we need to model contentment in our home. First Timothy chapter 6 verses 6 through 10 say this. It says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it's certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which, while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." And so, one of the things we need to learn to do is to be content, not covetous. Covetousness is the idea of always wanting more. If you wanted me to simply define contentment, contentment is not always wanting more. Contentment is saying, I have enough. It's really that, simply that sentiment. I have enough. Could I have more? Sure, but I have enough. And in plain terms, where the rubber meets the road for each one of us, it literally, it's living below your means. It's spending less money than you bring in. That's a great gauge of contentment. Um, it's being careful not to accumulate debt of non necessities. And it's so hard because some of us have things we enjoy and hobbies we like, and so what we'll do is, in order to deal with those things, we'll work extra hours, we'll take on extra jobs, just so that we can buy something that isn't necessary. And I'm not against working extra hours or jobs, but if you're constantly doing that to buy something that's not necessary to the detriment of your family, what are you really doing for your family? I mean, where you could be spending that time with your family. And I'll say it a little bit later because it's important for you as an adult to know that your family would rather have you than to have stuff. And so it's important for us to understand that. It's important for us to learn the difference between our needs, our wants, and our desires. As a parent, as an adult, we want to provide for the needs of our family. But when it comes to our wants and desires, some restraint is a good thing. Learning to say no is a good thing. Learning to earn and save and teach earning and saving. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But even modeling that for our kids, man, even if you already have the money to be able to do it, or you can work the extra hours to do it, just modeling it for our kids. We're not going to buy this now, but I want you to watch mom or dad. Well, this is the goal, and we're gonna save money towards it. One of my favorite things that Cassie has done in our house is that when she earns money, she has, now we have one bank account together, but she always saves money aside specifically for us to use when we go on vacation. And that money never makes in a bank account. It's actually, I never even see it, but I know about it, and I can see it anytime I want to. But we hold on to it, and she sets it off to the side um, so that we can have more when that vacation comes, and I really appreciate that. So what are the necessities? Shelter, food, clothing, education. I would even put family recreation in a necessity. I think it's good for you to plan a family budget that includes saving for some extra special times, for family time. I think family time is a necessity. And again, your children want you more than they want stuff, and so I think it's important for you to do so. One of the things we need to do is to model contentment in our home. Number two is to mentor workers in our home. And really, this is where Cassie and I are right now, and still trying to work all of these things out. But one of the things we need to be careful is to not let our families develop the expectation that we're just going to hand them everything. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 4 says this: "The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat," or in other words, will be blessed. I think it's important for us to, as we're cultivating contentment, is to teach them the value of hard work. Teach them the correlation between labor and reward. Um, Teach them that work is the means for provision. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse 10 says, "For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any of you not work, neither should he eat." So work is the means by which provision happens. Kids need to understand that that money doesn't just appear via mom or dad's checkbook or credit card, but it's actually a result of somebody spending time and investing their strength and energy to earn it. I know our parents always said, money doesn't grow on trees, and that's true. But let's explain to them and let them see how money is earned. The fact that you put in all of those hours, and the fact that you do labor hard at that job, and money just doesn't. It's funny because we had to explain that to not too long ago to even to some of our own kids that it's not like, oh, we just have this card or this account that has an endless amount of money in it. Um, Teach them that work is God ordained. Um, it's important for us to understand that work was instituted before the fall. Work is not um, a it's not a result of sin. It's not a result of the fall. Some of the difficulties of work are the sweat of the brow and that kind of stuff are, but work itself was instituted before the fall ever happened. One of God's first instructions to Adam and Eve was for them to tend the garden, for them to work, and so work is a gift from God. Um, we should teach them that diligence is the best vehicle to success. Proverbs 22 and verse 29 says, "Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men." And don't wait until they're a teenager. Some of this you maybe think, oh, okay, I'll do that when they're a teenager. Don't wait until they're a teenager to teach diligence and the value of hard work. They can help you right now. And I'll even say this: they can help you right now. And that's I think sometimes that's the hardest things. The hardest thing is because especially when they're young, you will you'll say, "Well, I want to teach them this," but actually, let's say empty the dishwasher, or wash the dishes, or mow the lawn, or sweep the floor, or take out the trash, whatever, and they actually become more of a detriment and make things more difficult. And you say, "Well, I'm just going to do it now because it's easier for me to do that." But it's important that they can learn to help you clean, or they can learn to help do chores, or they can learn to pick up extra jobs. And again, I have it with my own kids, a desire to get more money because they're always wanting to buy different things, and I appreciate some of my kids, and I mentioned this before. In the summer, Josiah's always wanting to do some sort of lemonade stand. I said the other day, this morning, he's trying to work with the Kellys to pick weeds and those kind of things. He's always asking, like, what can I do to earn money? Now he's sometimes he's willing to do the work, and sometimes he isn't, and those kinds of things. But I appreciate he's thinking, okay, I understand that if I want the money to do something, I might have to work for it. Um, Another thing we do is to manage our own stewardship. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 through 2 say, "Let a man so account of us as of the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mystery of God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful." We should manage our own stewardship. Um, Attitudes regarding money are learned. And so we've all made mistakes. All of us have all made our own mistakes concerning money mistakes, myself included. And I don't want my kids to make those mistakes. And so, what are some things we need to teach them? We need to teach them to be generous. Acts 20 and verse 35 says, "I've showed you all things, how that so laboring ye ought to support the weak, and to remember the words of the Lord Jesus. It is more blessed to give than to receive." We should teach them to be generous. We should show them generosity. Um, We should teach them the promises of God concerning giving, and to those who are faithful to give. Proverbs chapter 3 verses 9 through 10 says, "Honor the Lord with thy substance and with the first fruit of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine." And so we need to teach them to be generous, teach them the promises of God concerning those who are faithful in giving. We should teach them how to budget. um, uh, Proverbs chapter 23, Luke 14, 28 through 30 talks about a person who's going to go and build a barn, but they count the cost of it and see if they have what's needed to do that. We should be teaching them how to put their financial income and expenses, even simply on a piece of paper, and track spending as they go. That's one of the things, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, that Cassie and I have become much more diligent on personally, and want to be passing down as our kids get older to them as well. Seeing very clear, this is the income and this is the outgo, and seeing where everything is going, and when we spend stuff, to put it in the budget and to kind of keep track of those things diligently. And so not only should we teach them budgeting, we should teach them savings. Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 20 says, "There is treasure to be desired, and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man spendeth it up." There's another study out there that says 20% of Americans save nothing from year to year. 28% of Americans save a very small amount. So that's 50% of Americans that save either nothing or very little. But the most surprising thing in that whole study was this: it was that those that saved the most were not from the highest income households. And oftentimes you may think, well, people have more money so they can save more. This is what one analyst said in this study. He said, saving is not a function of income, it's a function of having the ability to live within your means consistently. Um, and so the amount of income matters much less than your ability to live within your means. So not only should we teach them budgeting and saving, but we should also teach them how to spend, to practice wise spending habits. Obviously, we know one of the issues with the prodigal son was that he wasted his substance on riotous living. So, what are some things that we can help them avoid? Some things to avoid. One of the things we need to teach them to avoid is impulse buying. Somebody We haven't quite implemented this, but somebody has said it's a good idea to pray about a major purchase for 30 days. Um, and to keep you from making an impulse purchase. Another one besides an purchase is a compulsive purchase, and this is something that we have to work on, and we have to work on with our own kids a lot. And that is the idea that you don't have to buy something every time you go to the store. You don't have to buy something. It's not. We just have this compulsive thing that's like, all right, we're in the store, so we must have to purchase something. And by the way, we see with every kid, right, crying down the aisles, asking mom or dad if they can buy these things. Another thing we need to help them guard against is special interest purchases. And by the way, this is hard for people who have major or expensive hobbies, musicians, mechanics, electronic geeks, right? And so, or people that are into electronics or things like that, because those purchases are usually pretty expensive. And so it's like always, I have this special interest and I'm just constantly feeding this special interest. You don't have to buy all of them, you don't have to buy the latest one. You can wait and be patient on that. And then the last one is our status seeking purchases. Again, that idea of the latest model, the name brand, um, because it's futile to seek acceptance through things. And then the last thing is we need to maintain biblical priorities at home. Um, the attitudes of the heart express our priorities, and we as the adults need to focus on setting and modeling two basic priorities. And here they are. First of all, so we need to model trusting God, um, especially in these times right now. It's hard to give. There are times in life where it's harder to give than other times. As a matter of fact, right now, I doubt you'll find any secular financial advisor who would recommend giving. Uh, but Malachi chapter 3 and verse 10 says, "Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it." Now, here's the thing: God doesn't promise to make us wealthy by giving, but God's grace in our hearts do compel us to give back. And you may be able to one day, and most of us won't, but you may be able to one day give your child $1 million. But if you have not taught them to trust the Lord, you haven't left them with much. See, one of the greatest dangers of accumulating wealth is that we transfer our trust from God to ourselves. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 17 says, "Charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy." So one of the major things you need to instill into your those that come behind us is the trust in God. And the number two is this: to serve God. Trust God and serve God. Teach them when they kind of get this covetous mindset and they want something for themselves, teach them to turn their attention from their wants and desires to the actual needs of others. Now, I'm going to say something that may sound familiar to us and we're going to laugh at here for just a second. But all of us have probably heard our mothers or fathers or parents at some time, say the whole thing when we're not eating our dinner and we're getting ready to throw it away. And they'll say something like, "There's starving kids in Africa, that would die for that." And we laugh about that. It's like, oh, we just kind of roll our eyes about it. But guess what? We still remember it. We still think about it right now. And even though maybe that wasn't their intent, that's what they're doing. They're pointing our eyes to the fact that, hey, you have so much. You have so much. You have above and beyond. And there are people out there that genuinely have needs. And so it's just one of those things that reminds us of the needs of other people. I want to encourage you to involve your kids in service. One of the things Cassie and I always wanted to do is we wanted to always, if we could, if we were able to, anytime that we went on a missions trip, we wanted to take our whole family with us, no matter how old they were, because we wanted them to see the needs of others and to serve together as a family to try to help the needs of other people. Um, the road to contentment begins at home. And children who learn these principles and skills that we just talked about will enter adulthood with a financial and social maturity that is beyond their years. Um, they'll begin adulthood with principles and habits that will help every single one of their relationships, with their spouses, with their bosses, um, all of those things. But best of all, and most of all, they will have learned contentment. They will have learned that they will always have enough. I have enough. And I think that's a question that we need to a probing question that each one of us, myself included, my family included, probably need to ask ourselves a little bit more often as we're moved to spend, as we're moved to make a purchase or spend money a certain way, to step back from it for just a moment and ask ourselves, do I have enough? Do I have enough? Um, and again, sometimes the Lord blesses us, and sometimes it's we can, as long as we're wise stewards of our money, we can still purchase things that we enjoy. But it's the idea of contentment and asking ourselves again on a regular basis, do I have enough? So I hope again some of these thoughts have been a help to you. There's still things again um, as a husband over our family and with young children, boy, it's something we wrestle with on a day to day and week to week basis. And I'm not standing here as an authority on this thing. Again, Cassie and I really kind of buckled down about 2 years ago or so, maybe a little bit more than that. I'm not sure, probably a little bit more than that, on really trying harder to live by a budget And it's really helped us out a lot in trying to teach some of those things to our own children and pass some of those things down, and trying to encourage them to understand that money and the things that money can't buy, the things that money can buy aren't everything. Um, Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy contentment, and we're called to be content. And so I hope some of these things have been a help to you and encouragement to you along the way. So yeah, I see some of you watch right now. George says Ella's already putting her toys away, and see, it's something is that simple. It's just when you leave the room, and again, we do the same thing with our kids. It's a very simple thing. It's a very simple thing, but we'll call them back, even if we've already started putting them to bed. I'll call them back down to come help and clean up living room if they made that mess, or those kinds of things. Just helping out in that way. So I hope some of these things have been a help to you, an encouragement to you in some way, and hope you have a good Saturday evening, and you're up and ready to go for wherever you're going to be worshiping tomorrow morning at your church. I hope you're involved in that. Again, if you're part of Pioneer, some exciting things tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be my first opportunity to preach since the month of February, and excited to do that, share God's word with you, and share some other things that have been going up in the coming weeks at Pioneer. So we're looking forward to that. Hope you guys have a good rest of the evening, and we will talk to you later.